going on, guys? It's your boy John the Liquidator coming back with breaking news hot off the press. Humpty Dumpty himself has fallen off the damn wall. That is Deshaun Watson. Now, Cleveland fans, I got news to tell you. I've been telling y'all this thing was going to be bad since January, bro. I told y'all. When it came to Deshaun Watson playing, there's nothing.
He was supposed to be untouchable, the savior, the face of the franchise for the next 15 years. And on a humid afternoon in Berea, Ohio, with cameras rolling and every national outlet watching, Deshaun Watson walked off the practice field looking like a man who had already lost something he couldn't get back. Nobody said it out loud, not yet, but you could feel it in the silence. This is the story of a rookie who was never supposed to be here, a fifth-round pick, a name that fell so far on draft night that grown men in suits sat stunned in green rooms, wondering if the entire league had lost its mind. This is the story of Shedeur Sanders. And this summer, in the one building where his future was supposed to be decided quietly, behind closed doors, away from the noise, it stopped being quiet at all. Because right now, in Cleveland, something is happening that nobody in that front office expected, and it's not staying inside the building anymore. Go back 6 months before any of this, before training camp, before the practice reps, before the whispers turned into headlines. Shedeur Sanders was a story people loved to argue about, but almost nobody believed in. He'd been QB1 in college, a household name, the son of a Hall of Famer who built his whole life under a microscope. And then draft night happened, and that microscope turned into something else. Team after team passed, round after round went by, and a kid who had spent his entire life being told he was the guy suddenly had to sit in front of a television and watch his name not get called again and again and again. Think about that for a second. Think about what it actually feels like to sit in a room full of family, full of cameras, full of hope, and watch hour after hour go by while your name stays stuck on a draft board nobody wants to touch. Most people don't survive that moment with their confidence intact. Most people carry that kind of public humiliation for the rest of their lives, quietly in the back of their minds, every single time they walk onto a field. That kind of fall does something to a person. It either breaks you or it becomes the thing that drives you for the rest of your career. Cleveland took a chance late, not because they were desperate, because somebody in that building saw something the rest of the league missed. But even after landing in Cleveland, the story didn't change much. He wasn't the guy. He wasn't even close to being the guy. Deshaun Watson was the guy, a 4-year, $230 million guy, a guy the franchise had bet its entire future on back when the plans still made sense on paper. Shedeur was the developmental project, the insurance policy, the name you mention in a sentence that starts with eventually and ends with but not now. That was the plan anyway.
Could tell me to convince me that Deshaun Watson was going to be better than Shedeur Sanders. Not in this lifetime, and damn sure not the next one. Deshaun Watson is done. Horrible. And for the NFL executives to put Shedeur as the worst quarterback in the league is beyond me. But there is reports coming out of training camp that Deshaun Watson looks bad, specifically in 7-on-7, 11-on-11, all football activity.
Then camp opened, and the plan started cracking. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. It happened one rep at a time, one practice at a time, the kind of slow burn shift that only the people actually standing on that field could see before anyone else did. Beat reporters started noticing something in their notebooks that didn't match the narrative they walked in with. Completion numbers that looked less like a developmental rookie and more like a guy who belonged. Throws into tight windows that made assistant coaches glance at each other on the sideline. And on the other side of the ball, a different story was writing itself. A franchise quarterback, the guy the entire rebuild was supposed to be built around, struggling to find any rhythm at all. By day 6 of training camp, the numbers were impossible to ignore. 21 of 25, sharp, efficient, not one interception through the entire stretch. Meanwhile, on the same field, in the same reps, under the same coaching staff, 5 of 11. That's not a bad day, That's a red flag with sirens attached to it, in a quarterback competition that was supposed to already be decided. And here's the part that made the whole building uneasy. Nobody wanted to say what everyone was thinking, because saying it out loud meant admitting that a $230 million decision might have been the wrong one. It meant putting a number on regret in a franchise that has already spent years chasing stability at the position and finding heartbreak instead. So instead, people talked around it. Analysts hedged their words. Insiders used phrases like growth and development and long-term outlook, the kind of language teams use when they're trying to protect a plan that reality is starting to challenge. But you can only hedge for so long before the tape speaks louder than the talking points. Let's pause here for a second, because this is the part of the story people forget. This isn't just a football competition. This is two men carrying two completely different weights onto the same field every single day. One of them is trying to prove that a devastating, public, well-documented decline isn't the end of his career. That somewhere in there, the guy who used to be one of the most dangerous quarterbacks in football still exists. The other is trying to prove that everyone who doubted him, every executive who passed on him 5 times, every analyst who called him a project instead of a prospect, was wrong. 2 men, 2 different kinds of pressure, 1 job. And in that kind of environment, quiet moments start to mean something. Watson didn't have to come back to Cleveland this offseason. A lot of the team had already cleared out, but he did. Showed up, threw routes, put in extra work with a group that included a tight end who hadn't practiced in months while working back from injury. On the surface, that's the story of a guy fighting for his job. Underneath it, though, some longtime voices around the team pointed out something simpler and a little more uncomfortable. Shedeur never needed to prove he was showing up. He never laughed.
He is not it, but I'm telling you right now, do not be surprised if they name him the starter. I've been telling y'all this. The Browns are going to tank the season. Now, I can't definitively put a finger on it, but I think they is, bro. And if they start Deshaun Watson or even Dylan Gabriel, now we know Dylan Gabriel's name has been being tossed around this week. Where the hell is Dylan Gabriel coming from? Left field like he kumbaya or something? The QB track.
That detail matters more than it sounds like it does. Because in professional sports, presence is a message. Effort is a message. And when one guy is out there working quietly every single day without needing a headline to justify it, and the other guy needs a moment like that just to remind the building he's still committed, people notice. Coaches notice. Teammates notice. Front offices notice, even if they don't say it in a press conference. There's something almost poetic about it if you step back far enough. A veteran with a massive contract flying back into town just to remind everyone he's still in the fight. And a rookie who never had to leave in the first place, quietly putting in reps day after day, letting his film speak instead of his schedule. One story needs a comeback narrative. The other is just consistency. And consistency in a league obsessed with highlight reels and dramatic turnarounds is a quieter kind of powerful. Now, here's where it gets complicated, because this isn't a simple story of one guy good, one guy bad. Longtime insiders who've covered this organization for years have been careful to separate what's ideal from what's acceptable. And what they're saying is this: it would be acceptable, given the circumstances, given the money already invested, given the fact that Cleveland has a brand new head coach and a brand new offensive system installed for the very first time this year. It would be acceptable for Shedeur to open the season as QB2. Not preferable. Not the vision anybody has for a guy some people believe could be a franchise cornerstone for 15 years, but acceptable. And that gap between acceptable and preferable is exactly where all this tension lives. Because if the front office chooses acceptable over preferable, they're choosing to bet against what their own eyes have shown them in training camp. They're choosing loyalty to a financial decision over what the tape is saying every single day. And if this team struggles early in the season, if Watson's early performances don't turn around, that decision is going to be replayed, dissected, and criticized on national television every single week until something changes. Picture it. Week 3, a tight loss, a missed third down, cameras cutting immediately to the sideline, to Shedeur, standing there in a clean jersey, helmet in hand, watching. That single shot, that single moment, becomes the story of the entire week, regardless of what actually happens on the field. That's the world this franchise is walking into if they choose the safe answer over the obvious one. There's a scenario floating around Cleveland right now that almost sounds too dramatic to be real, except everyone in the building is thinking about it. Watson could open the season on the road for 6 of the first 9 games. Away from home,
away from a fan base that has already shown in ticket sales and jersey numbers and the volume of a stadium exactly who they want to see under center. If Watson opens the year on the road, some believe that could actually work in his favor. Fewer boos, less hostility, a chance to find rhythm outside the pressure cooker of Huntington Bank Field. But if he's starting at home, with Shedeur standing on that sideline in full pads, ready and waiting.
Of today's day 6 of training camp, Shedeur once again spectacular day, 21 of 25. Deshaun Watson 5 of 11. Dylan Gabriel 4 of 7 with 1 interception. And to my knowledge, I do not believe Shedeur threw an interception yet, bro. That is, since training camp has been being conducted. Guys, look at Shedeur numbers. Look at everything Shedeur.
That's not just a quarterback controversy anymore. That's a stadium holding its breath every single snap. Imagine that atmosphere for a second. A home opener, a crowd that's been begging for change for years. Every incompletion met with murmurs, and by the fourth one, murmurs turn into chants. Not because the fans are cruel, but because they've already watched the tape from camp. They already know what they believe they're supposed to be seeing on that field, and it isn't what's in front of them. Let's talk about the offense for a second, because that matters just as much as who's holding the clipboard. Todd Monken isn't just picking a quarterback. He's building a system that has to adapt to whoever's under center. Watson, even in decline, still brings mobility, still brings the threat of designed runs and RPOs that stress a defense differently than a pure pocket passer. Shedeur has shown in camp that he can operate outside structure too, bootlegs, keepers, rollouts. But the shape of this offense will look different depending on who's leading it. That's not a small detail. That's the entire identity of a football team hanging in the balance. And it's not just about the quarterback either. Around him, this receiver room is starting to take shape in ways that matter to this exact conversation. A deep threat who's shown flashes of separation nobody expected this early. A tight end working his way back from injury who could become one of the most reliable safety valves in the building. A young core of pass catchers still learning timing, still learning trust, still learning exactly which quarterback throws with the kind of anticipation that makes their job easier. Every single one of those relationships is being built right now, in real time, in front of everybody, and every rep either strengthens or weakens the case for who should be throwing them the ball come week 1. If you're just finding this channel, this is exactly the kind of story we live for, the ones with real stakes, real tension, and no easy answers. Hit that subscribe button, because this quarterback battle in Cleveland is about to get a lot louder before it gets quiet again. Now here's the piece that changes the entire conversation. Behind the scenes, in the front office, this isn't just a two-man competition being run in a vacuum. Cleveland has quietly rebuilt its personnel department with some of the most respected voices in the league, executives who've been part of winning organizations for the better part of 2 decades, brought in specifically to sharpen the evaluation process after years of costly mistakes at this exact position. These aren't rookies making a gut call under pressure. These are men who've built rosters that won consistently, who understand exactly what's at stake if they get this decision wrong again. That matters more than casual fans realize. This isn't a coaching staff flying blind. This is a front office stacked with people who've seen quarterback competitions before, who've watched young players outplay expensive veterans before, and who know exactly how costly it is to ignore what's right in front of them just to protect a decision made in a different year, under different circumstances, with a different set of expectations.
Has been doing thus far. We heard Todd Monken state earlier the growth of Shedeur. Yes, there's growth. Shedeur has been in the lab working with somebody behind the scenes, and when it come out, y'all gonna be like, damn, John Ben told me, because I still got sources. I just ain't gotta speak on it no more. I don't want no validation. Just watch. And I'm telling you right now, if the Browns start Shedeur Sanders to start this season, they're going to the playoffs. They're going to the playoffs.
And that's what makes this summer different from every other quarterback competition storyline the league has seen before. This isn't a marketing angle. This isn't a coach saying all the right things in a press conference to keep both players motivated. The tape is showing something real. The numbers are showing something real. And an entire coaching staff, an entire front office, and an entire fan base are being forced to reckon with the gap between what they planned for and what's actually happening on that practice field. There's also a quieter storyline developing along the offensive line, one that ties directly back into all of this. A rookie center, a 5th-round pick himself, has been pushing for a starting job the moment camp opened. And that detail isn't a coincidence in this story. It's a mirror. Because if this franchise is willing to start a rookie quarterback who fell in the draft, the question becomes whether they're willing to build an entire young infrastructure around him at the same time, or whether they lean on veteran presence everywhere else to make that transition smoother. Every decision this front office makes right now is connected to the other. Nothing is happening in isolation. Somewhere in that tension is a young quarterback who has already been told no more times than most players hear in an entire career. 5th round. 5 teams passing on him again and again on national television, while cameras zoomed in on his face waiting for him to break. He didn't break. He went to a franchise that wasn't ready to hand him anything, walked into a quarterback room where the starting job had already been decided before he even signed his rookie contract, and instead of complaining about the depth chart, he just started outplaying it. That's the story underneath the story. Not just talent, not just accuracy numbers or interception counts. It's the resilience of somebody who has already survived the worst version of doubt the league can throw at a player, and instead of letting it define him, used it as fuel. Think about how rare that actually is. Most players who fall that far in a draft carry a chip on their shoulder that turns into bitterness. It shows up in body language, in press conferences, in the way they talk about the teams that passed on them. But by every account coming out of that building, that's not what this looks like. This looks like quiet, deliberate, day after day proof. No excuses, no shortcuts, just reps and results and a growing pile of evidence that the 5th round was never an accurate measurement of what this kid actually is. Nobody in that building knows exactly how this ends yet. Maybe Watson finds his rhythm before the opener and silences every bit of this conversation. Maybe the front office decides the financial commitment outweighs what the tape is showing right now. Or maybe, for the first time since draft night humbled a kid who thought he'd hear his name called in the 1st round, Shedeur Sanders walks out of training camp with the job nobody thought he'd get this soon. And if that happens, think about what it actually means. Think about the symbolism of a kid who was told no by 31 different franchises across 5 rounds, standing in that tunnel on opening day, walking out as QB1. Not because of politics, not because of a contract, because the tape left the front office no other choice. Whatever happens next, one thing is already true. The kid who fell out of the 1st round, out of the 2nd, out of the 3rd, out of the 4th. The kid who sat in that room and watched team after team look right past him. He made sure that by the time training camp ended, nobody in Cleveland could look past him anymore. And if this story has taught us anything so far, it's this. Doubt him at your own risk. Because Shedeur Sanders has made a career out of proving people wrong in exactly the moments they expected him to disappear.